Thanks so much for joining me today. My video is going to be about these writing prompts or bell work, the questions that I like to put up at the beginning of class just to get the kids thinking and to engage them in conversation about different issues and things that are going on in the world, but mostly to get them thinking and to share their opinion. I do have them share what they wrote, and so I'm going to show you some of my Google Slides that has the writing prompt on there, and they just have the first 5 minutes to respond. It was really interesting to see and hear what they thought, and there was a lot of lively discussion. And as I said previously in my other videos, that I did this with my high school students, and so a lot of them, oftentimes it could get into a little bit of a debate, so it's just a matter of facilitating that conversation in a positive manner, but also teaching them that it's okay to disagree. You just need to be able to listen to each other and understand where they're coming from. So let's take a look. Okay, everyone, thank you so much again for joining me. And today my video is going to be about some more getting to know you activities, and also just the quick write or also bell work. This is something that I use with my high school students, so I wanted to share a little bit of that with you. So let me just go ahead and jump in and share my screen with you. I really love Google Slides. Let me tell you, Google Slides is amazing. Okay, so first, what I wanted to show you, and I'll just go full screen. Okay, so here, and again, this is looking at the first week of school, the first couple of days of school. Now, I was still learning my schedule, and the bell schedule as well was a little crazy. So like Tuesdays and Thursdays were different schedules from Mondays and Fridays, and then Wednesday was its own day because it was early release. So it was just crazy. So in the beginning, I just did this for my notes so that I could see which periods were which class. And then I like to organize my Google Slides for the week. Some people will do theirs by subject, but I did mine by the week. It was just easier for me to make notes on the slides for the week and for the periods, et cetera, et cetera. It was just easier for me to organize, but it's different for everybody. So I just wanted to explain that. And then each of these days are hyperlinked to a slide. And that was so helpful. So I'm using this as an example. So if we go to Monday, it goes to my slide that I have, which has the quick write. Now I have all of these different slides, but for this presentation, I'm just showing you the quick write that I did for the day. So, and then that's just a note to myself, but you could put day 1, day 2, day 3, or if that helps you. Okay, so I have the quick write question here. And this is just a reminder, because even though you tell kids to write a paragraph and that a paragraph is 5 sentences, sometimes people forget. I don't know why, because they think that they've written 2 really long run-in sentences that looks like a paragraph. They think that's a paragraph. But so I had to gently remind them it's 5 sentences. And then here is just also another link for me to go back to my home screen. So if I click on that, it takes me back to this home screen. So that was just some super fun little tricks that I used in my classroom. And again, this is all up on a smartboard, which is wonderful. And this here is, again, just a note for me for what week when I organize my slides. So let's go back to that question. Should schools have opened during the COVID-19 surge and increasing Delta variant cases? Why or why not? This was something that I asked students last year, just because I was curious. I was curious to hear their opinions. I wanted them to feel safe in talking about this very, very important issue. And some kids heard things on the news, some didn't, some only knew what their parents or friends were saying about, what was going on and decisions about wearing masks, etc. So I really wanted to know their opinion. Like, what do they think? Should schools have opened? And we opened or started school in August. Some schools start after Labor Day. So that was a discussion that we had about whether or not schools should have opened, or should we just have stayed studying or working online, doing virtual classes. So there was a very, very lively discussion about it. And of course, you can tell what kind of conversations they're having in their home. So I really enjoyed talking about this particular question. But what I wanted to show you, and I'll actually just go back to my home screen and I'll go out here. But what I did was put all of their responses, well, actually it wasn't all of them, but those who did respond to the question, into a Google form. And Google Forms is fantastic because then it will graph it for you. So I was able to talk to my students so that they could see what some of the other students in the other classes were saying about it. So as you can see here, about 60.9% of, well, and you can see 64 responses, and I had about 130 students. So 64 had actually responded, and that's because there was a lot of absences. Either kids weren't there at the beginning of class, and so they didn't get to respond to the question. But as you can see, 60.9% of the students surveyed here, 64, said no, schools should not have opened. And I find that interesting. And again, some students shared why. And then I have 34.4% of my students that said yes. And they did want schools to open. And then we have this very small percent here, 4.7% said they weren't sure. Okay, so down here, you can see some of their reasons behind it, which I found very interesting. Children are in danger of getting COVID in school, and parents are worried that the children get infected. So I asked this question, I believe it was on the 4th day of school. And what's interesting is within the first week, students are already absent because they got COVID. So some of the students were right in their opinion about schools not opening, because then there were, I would say about 90% of students that were out and had to be quarantined for 2 weeks. And there were some students that I didn't see for 4 weeks because at the school, there were siblings or 2 or 3 siblings. If one got it, then they all ended up getting it, or at least being quarantined because they were exposed to someone with COVID. So that was very interesting, and I really enjoyed reading their responses, as you can see here. So for me, really being intentional with when you play getting to know you activities, it should be fun, but for me, I also like to make sure that there is a learning element and that current events are incorporated into the lesson, and of course, and also the activity. Okay, so let's go back here. Slideshow. Okay, so we looked at the question for Monday. Okay, so looking at Tuesday. Should you be allowed to use your cell phones in school? Why or why not? Now, of course, teachers have their opinions about cell phones, but I was really curious to see what students had to say about it. And we talked about why we have certain policies, because majority of the time it is distracting. But so to hear some students talk about the learning aspects, right? And they did say, well, if we were to turn it in for part of the period, but then get it back so that we can do XYZ on their cell phones. Thought it was interesting, but we still talked about what the school policy was, just to reiterate that cell phones were not to be out during class. Okay, and then I will, in class, I'm not toggling back and forth from the home screen. I'm just doing that for this presentation, so you don't have to see me scroll through all of my slides. But so I really enjoyed doing quick writes with various topics, and you can Google different questions or just make up your own questions. As always, thanks so much for joining me. If you liked the video, don't forget to subscribe, click the notification bell, and leave a comment below. Let me know what you liked, what you'd like to see in the future. And as always, you've got this.